I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I just had a delightful conversation with those two. It's always a delight. What a joy
Yeah,
that you all get to work together, huh?
yeah, we know each other, and we're we have very similar missions, so it's great
Yeah.
to be all collaborating together.
Yeah, I love that. So you're going to take us through 10 real life examples of how professionalism or professionals uh will be sorry, I just lost the slide there. I was reading it and it came off.
Oh, so
Sorry.
I'll tell you, it's 10.
Yeah.
So, the theme is career connections, and
Yes.
we're talking about when people relaunch their careers, what are great examples of actual career connections that people make that work for them. So
Right.
that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm here. If you, oh, there's the slide. It's coming back, coming in hot. 10 real examples of how professionals on career breaks use career connections to successfully return to work. So we're going to get into it. I'm here if you need anything. Do you need to share your
Okay.
screen? Are you doing a show or are you just talking here?
I'm
Okay.
just talking. I'm
Okay.
not sharing my screen. And also, I'll add that our team may be posting links in the chat as we go along. So keep an eye out for that too. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and talk about these examples. So I just want to thank Power to Fly and thank you, Hunter, for being able to partner on this session for the Careers Connection Summit. And I just to give people a little bit of background, at iRelaunch, we are working with people who are returning to work after taking long career breaks. And so when we are thinking about a session like this and making career connections, we have in mind people who are returning after a career break. But the reality is that the strategies and these examples that you're going to hear today are relevant for any job seeker, career break or not. So when our team at iRelaunch was talking about this session, we thought the most effective way to talk about career connections that are realistic and that are workable would be to use actual examples that worked for real job seekers. So for some of these examples, we have podcast interviews. Some of them we have success stories. We might have an article, but that's what the links are going to be that you're going to see show up in the chat. And before I go into them, because we're talking about career connections, I want to stress advice that we give our iRelaunch community, and that is not to forget when you're thinking about making career connections that expect at the outset you are going to have many conversations that don't go anywhere. So we're giving examples of how these conversations start and the most effective ones that lead to job opportunities. But you have many of them that don't go anywhere in order to yield the few that result in the actual job opportunity. So I'm going to discuss these examples in categories. And the first category I want to talk about is connecting through volunteer work. And volunteer work is often cited as an effective way of meeting new people outside of your traditional circles because you're working on some sort of common cause that's separate from your job search. So meeting people in this kind of context is perfect because you're building a relationship and a connection without feeling like you have to come across as opportunistic. It's more of a natural progression of the relationship and the career connection building. So here are a few examples of volunteer work that led to career examples for real relaunchers who ultimately returned to work. The first one was a marketing strategist in our community who arranged for a panel of speakers for a software marketing industry association event. And one of those speakers became her first client when she started her consulting business. That was how she relaunched her career. So I love this because we're big believers in volunteering for your professional organization for exactly this reason. You meet experts and others in your field in an event organizing capacity, and you start your relationship in that way. So a version of this for introverts who might be good writers and prefer to and would, if they could elect to, would interact with people that way, is as follows. So you could ask your professional association if they would publish an interview with an expert in your field, if you, in their newsletter, if you were able to make that happen. And most of them would say yes. Then you can go to the expert and explain that you want to interview them for the XYZ Professional Association's newsletter, and they will most likely say yes. So you meet the expert or other professional connection in this capacity when you're interviewing them, and then periodically be in touch. Maybe they wrote an article that you just read that you have a reaction to, or maybe there's something relevant in your field that you see that you want to share with them, or maybe they're posting something on their LinkedIn profile and you want to comment on it. So you're having these periodic connections with them, and at the right moment, you can determine whether it's appropriate to then ask them something that's related to your job search. And I guess now that we're in 2024 and lots of people have podcasts, if that's something that you're doing, you could do this very similar thing, but ask the person to do a podcast interview as the connection point, if you're so inclined. So another volunteering example was a lawyer who was coming off of a 4-year career break, who ended up volunteering in a non-clinical trials area of our cancer research organization, totally unrelated to what they were doing before. They were a litigator in a different area, but this person had a friend who took a management role there, a new job there, and invited this relauncher to check it out as a volunteer, just to see what she thought about the field and to meet some of the people there. And that ultimately led to her being a contractor and then later getting a permanent role. Now, one of my most inspiring role models is the late, great Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. She was the queen of volunteering early in her career. She took a 5-year career break early in her career to take care of her 3 sons. And I wanted to give you a sense of the range of things that she did that helped her in her relaunch later on. So one was she graded bar exams for the Arizona Bar Association. That kept her current in the law. I'm not sure what the current equivalent of that is, but thought I would include that. That's something she actually did. She set up a lawyer referral network for the local bar association, and that kept her contacts current. She was a juvenile court referee. She sat on the county zoning and planning board, but most importantly for her actual career relaunch was that she got involved in local politics. And we have many relaunchers in our community who are involved in politics one way or the other. And of course, you know, it's an election year and politics are certainly in the headlines. So many opportunities to volunteer there. Now, Sandra Day O'Connor chaired her local county Republican Party organization, and then she started to move up and she got involved on the state level, again, as a volunteer, hosting large events. She was working, this is a long time ago, so she was working on Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater's 1964 presidential campaign. And this volunteer work and the network that she built through it were crucial elements in her return to the paid workforce in 1965, when she was appointed to a state assistant attorney general role, paid role. So that was how she relaunched her career. And of course, we know ultimately where she ended up. So much more, there's much more to this relaunch success story about Sandra Day O'Connor. There's a link in the chat that should give you a link to an article I wrote about this a few years ago. All right, so let's go to a new category, and that is examples that involve connecting through your alma mater. So first of all, check if your college or your grad school offers alumni career services, because this can be a great place to get a whole lot of resources that will contribute to your job search, but also you can make connections there, because typically there are a group of alumni who volunteer to have conversations about their work with alumni who are looking. So that's a great way to broaden your circle and make more career connections. But separate from that, one person in our iRelaunch community started a regional alumni group for her alma mater because there wasn't one in her area. Actually, we have a few people who did this. So they start the local group for their alumni association and then make connections whenever there is some kind of an alumni event. Another relauncher volunteered with her alma mater, and she ended up pitching an idea for a new program that became a reality and led to the alumni office hiring her. I'm going to add something that was pivotal for me that's related to this, and that, because I relaunched my career over 20 years ago, but I went to my 15-year business school reunion. And I know that some of us shy away from that because we don't have anything to report in the career department and we're on career break and we're not sure if we want to have a bunch of conversations about that. But remember that the people that you're going to meet there, your former classmates, are people from the past. Also, this is true for people who you work with, but people with whom you went to school have a frozen in time view of you. So even if, and this happens to so many of us, even if you have a diminished sense of self from being professionally disconnected for a long time, or because you're on a prolonged job search, we actually have a podcast miniseries at iRelaunch.com that is specifically on the prolonged job search and how people made their way through their lowest points to move on and ultimately be successful. So that's a sidebar resource you might want to check out. But keep in mind, the people from the past, they don't know anything about your diminished sense of self. They only remember you as you were when you were working together or when you were in school together. So if you were like me, you meet a former classmate at a reunion, and I really encourage you to go. And you're saying, you know, you're catching up, you're saying you're on career break, you're actively looking to go back to work, and then you ask them something about what they're doing in their work. That is a great starter conversation. So in my case, at this 15-year reunion, one of my former classmates turned out to be a headhunter, had started doing something else and then moved into this role. I had no idea. We had a short conversation. I didn't think anything of it. I talked to a lot of people over that weekend. And then 9 months later, 9 months after this, out of the blue, I hear from her. And she said she had come across, something had come across her desk that she thought, and I love this, was a great match with my skill set, because that's when the frozen in time concept popped into my head, because I thought, what skill set is she talking about? The one from when we were first years, 17 years before? Because I think that's what she was referencing. But the important piece about that is, because I didn't end up getting the job that had sparked that conversation in the first place and her outreach to me, but it got me going in my relaunch. I had been out for 11 years. I had actually at that point I was out for 10 years. I had no idea how I was or where I was going to start. And this was my starting point. It got me going. And ultimately I ended up relaunching my career, and I'm in a finance field. So that was my relaunch before I wrote a book on relaunching and started iRelaunch. I went back to work myself. But so that's my personal example there. I want to go to a new category, and this is examples of people who might have taken a childcare career break, or those of you who have not taken a career break, but who have children and get to meet other parents because your kids are in sports and you're organizing with them, or you're sitting watching games, or however you're connected with them through your kids' sports teams. So here's one from relauncher Elizabeth Gish, our very own Elizabeth Gish, who is a managing director at iRelaunch. She consults with employers to launch their career reentry programs. However, she originally relaunched her career at Oracle in corporate social responsibility. So how did that happen? She said networking with moms who knew her through her son's sports teams was key. So the person who introduced her to Oracle was a mother of a local player. This person had been at Oracle for over 25 years, and Elizabeth didn't really know her personally, but she met her through another friend who turns out knew Elizabeth's son. So when they spoke, when this person made it an introduction, and Elizabeth explained her new career interest and her extensive volunteer background in the corporate social responsibility area to this 25-year veteran at Oracle. And that was enough to get that person thinking about Oracle's corporate social responsibility program. And then she introduced Elizabeth to her colleague who led the global program, and ultimately that led to a job offer for Elizabeth. So here's another one in this same category. This is going way back, but in 2010, at the end of 2010, I was on the Today Show because they asked me to work with a relauncher. Her name is Tracy Shapiro. She was a divorced mom of with five kids who was coming off of a long career break, and she had just spent the last 9 months unsuccessfully applying for jobs. So you can get the whole story from I did a TED, actually a local TED talk that then got picked by the TED editors and elevated to the big TED. So it's my TED talk. The link is being posted. You can get the full background. It's only 12 minutes. But the important and relevant part of the conversation, as far as career connections go, is the job lead that she ultimately got that turned into her relaunch was at the Lindt Chocolate Company, you know, the European chocolate company, whose US headquarters is in New Hampshire, very close to where Tracy lives. And that happened because of a conversation that she had with the dad she was sitting next to at one of her kids' sports games. So again, another illustration of how those kinds of casual relationships can often turn out to be the critical ones. So here are a few good ones that I put in the other category because they're all different from each other. Happens to be 3 different engineers. So the first one was out for 20 years. And I like this being posted. I had a podcast conversation with this engineer, and she said one of the most important people and resources for her successful relaunch was a person that her friend met at a church event. So I'm illustrating this because lots of times, just in the course of living your life, you might meet someone at your place of worship, you run into someone in the grocery store. So those kinds of conversations can sometimes lead to another introduction, which can sometimes lead to that critical contact that leads to your success. So that's just a random example. Another engineer who's also a military spouse met a key contact because who was critical in her relaunch because she started commenting on something that was posted in her field. And there were other people commenting too. And she got engaged with one of the people that was commenting, and they got to know each other because they were having this LinkedIn conversation in the comment section. And that person later became a critical link for her to a job that she got. And then the third engineer learned about a career reentry program through a post that was made by a Women in Tech meetup group. So if you don't know about meetups, you can search for meetups in your local area on practically every topic, but certainly professional areas. They have meetups, and you can start going to their meetings. And sometimes it takes a while when you're going to their meetings before something evolves and becomes meaningful to you. So we have another example of that where the relauncher, it's really a story of persistence. This actually was a person who spoke at our last iRelaunch Return to Work conference. We always have a panel of successful relaunchers, and she said she kept going to these meetups. She went over and over again to the same groups, starting to go to different groups. She kept meeting people. She kept practicing talking about herself. She was refining how she described herself and also getting more targeted in her career direction. And finally, someone in one of the groups sent her a job posting that she applied for and ended up getting hired. So sometimes, persistence is really, well, oftentimes persistence is really the key, but that was how it worked in this context. So this last category of these two engineers who were involved in their meetup groups is really this idea of putting yourself in places where you're going to meet people in the course of interacting about something unrelated to your job search. So it could be meetup groups where you actually are learning, you share a professional interest because you're in the same field, and maybe that you end up in conversations about your job search. But you can also go to, for example, Toastmasters. We have relaunchers who swear by Toastmasters. That is the organization where people are learning to be better public speakers. And since COVID, some of their meetings groups meet virtually, some meet in person. They have chapters all over the country, very inexpensive to join. And that's a great example of a place where people have a common purpose. They're learning to be public speakers. Many of them are working. So you have this casual opportunity to interact with them because you're going to these meetings. And that has been successful for people. Another area where we have found success is people going to lectures in their field. It could be at a professional association. It could be at a college or university. And the idea is, if it's something that's related to your professional area, be easy on yourself at the beginning. Go to one of these lectures, but get in the habit of going. But when you go to the first ones, just tell yourself you're going to meet the person sitting next to you. And then as you start getting more comfortable going to these events, you might meet people before or after the event who are just when things are just starting or wrapping up. And maybe ultimately you want to meet the speaker. Now, if you want to meet the speaker, we recommend you go early and connect with a person while things are getting set up, as opposed to at the end when they're going to be surrounded by a big crowd, and it'll be harder to reach with them. So Hunter, I was wondering, I don't know if any questions came in through the chat, or are there any other kinds of topics that you want to talk about as we wrap up in the last few minutes?
Yeah, we only have 5 minutes left, but thank you so much for walking us through that. And before we wrap up too, and I'll check to see if we have some more questions, what is the best way for folks to stay connected with you if they have a question offline?
Sure. So the best way is probably to email info@irelaunch.com. So info@irelaunch.com. I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I make it a priority to be connected with people who are relaunching their careers, individuals. So that's fine too. Those are probably the best ways.
I love it, right? We live on LinkedIn, don't we, these days?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any surprising or creative ways relaunchers have used social media or online platforms to reconnect with their professional networks that you've seen?
That's a great question. And it's always changing too, because we used to talk about Twitter, now X, but if LinkedIn is an excellent social media platform.
Yeah.
Like if I had to recommend one, even, I mean, depending on your field, Instagram can be very, very effective too. We actually have an interview with a relauncher, Zarna Garg, who's an emerging, and I don't even want to say emerging, she is just a superstar comedian, took a 16-year career break, home with her kids. Look her up, Zarnagarg, Zarna Garg. She just opened for Amy Poehler and Tina Fey in their comedy tour. She has a Netflix special. Maybe it's Amazon Prime. She has this 1 hour special, and she is just on a tear. And it's because she uses Instagram to have little video excerpts of her comedy. And I think it started during COVID because she couldn't perform anywhere, and one of her kids just did it. And she has over 1 million followers now. So if you have something that is it's a particularly effective for them to see a video of you doing whether it's a cook. We've seen people who are chefs writing cookbooks or making presentations. Then, if you're a thought leader, you could have periodic excerpts about advice. So that's very effective for that. But I think overall LinkedIn, in terms of connecting with experts, looking at thought leaders, having active conversations in those comment sections, looking for your people from the past. LinkedIn is a gift to people who are on career break, because it helps us find all of those long lost people from the past that we don't even know where they are. And then actually, let me just throw this in as a tip for reestablishing relationships on LinkedIn when you're asking someone from the past you haven't been in touch with for a long time to connect with you. And that is, you're not going to go in and say, on career break, can you help me find a job? But you could say, great to connect. Assume they're going to connect with you. A lot of people think, what if they don't remember me? But assume they're going to connect with you, because they will. And then say, I am on career break. I am looking to become a subject matter expert all over again. And I'm in information gathering mode. Can you give me some recommendations on who the experts are in the field that you follow? Who do you think is posting or writing or podcasting or speaking? Who has the best information about the field? Any other recommendations for me to get up to speed? So it's a softball question for them, easy to answer. It doesn't get them involved in, can you help me get a job? At least not initially. And it's a great way to start the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And I completely agree with you about getting videos out. I see, people that post videos regularly, the rates are through the roof, of conversion rates, of connection rates, of engagement rates, like all that stuff. You are speaking my language. And fun fact, LinkedIn, to your point, is now rolling out like a For You discovery with the video feature, like TikTok.
I didn't know that. You heard it here first.
Heard it here first. It's rolling out. So like, I don't have it on my phone yet, but some of my friends do. But if you post a video on LinkedIn, it's going to those people now. So it's on its way. So LinkedIn and videos, totally agree with you. Well, this was so wonderful, Carol. Always a delight to have you here. And I can't wait until the next one. Thank you so much for being here. And folks will reach out to you on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Thank you, Hunter. And thanks, everyone. I hope the examples were helpful. And we really appreciate the partnership and being able to make these presentations with Power to Fly. Thanks, Hunter.
Thanks, Carol. See you next time.
All right. Bye.